Just key points.
Yeah, we're going to try and keep it to about 3 minutes because we got a lot of presentations, highlights, key points, the most important things.
Great, so I will start us off. One of the first things we talked about is moving or kind of addressing the traffic issues from the east-west corridor. So bringing the UTA lines, maybe a TRAX line coming along 2100 North, coming along the Pioneer Crossing down here. Pioneer Crossing down here, as well as up here on the Timpanogos Freeway, Timpanogos Highway. And then we really like the idea of so mass transit along those corridors, and then right here we had these two TOD categories, and we thought it would be really cool to combine them, given that you already have a lot of the commercial and the housing in between, just kind of creating one large, walkable, kind of mixed housing area.
Yeah, sure. Just maintain the commercial corridor, not worry about density all along I-15, but that's the place we should build so that we can preserve the neighborhoods and leave the neighborhoods alone and not fill those with high-density housing or mixed use. One cool idea was to preserve Main Street and to make it the arts district. If we're going to have a theater, maybe that's the right place to do it, where people can gather and walk to the shops and the business owners. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And then, of course, preserving our open space and our green space. So trying to put parks intermittently, really preserving the Jordan River Parkway Trail, along with, there's been proposals for larger kind of state park areas, again, preserving green space.
Great. That's probably it. Thank you. Thank you.
So our biggest focus was on schools. One, just making sure that before we increase density for anywhere, that the schools are available and the structures there for schools. Lehigh Junior's already at capacity, Willow Creek's at capacity. They pointed out that there's need for more sidewalks near the schools. Also, as they build out more high density in the west side, they'll likely need to set aside land for a third junior high, third high school, probably an extra elementary school out there. More commercial, we agree, along that area. And then, of course, that also with a lot of the junior high drop-off, if people need more bridge and stuff there around the school. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Thomas.
Our group did a lot of the similar things that you kind of already heard, although I will say that one thing that we kind of talked about a lot was the idea of getting services closer to the people that want to see and kind of use them. So we talked a lot about adding neighborhood commercial in a bunch of different areas so that the shops and the restaurants and the things that people want to access, they don't have to always cross I-15 to get to them, and they're not always in the most congested areas. They can kind of stay closer to where they already are and get additional shops on the west side and kind of down by some of the TOD areas. We also talked about, in the same vein, looking at additional civic services, so like either new rec centers, or libraries, just again, serving more people so that they don't always have to drive far to kind of get to some of those services. We talked about mixed-use developments being 4 or 5 stories and using the ground floor for commercial and upper levels for residential, so that we preserve view sheds, but we allowed for the density to preserve the existing neighborhoods as well, and then taking a lot of advantage of the TOD areas. We looked at new transit routes to kind of connect areas either along Main Street or 2100, and specifically connecting commuter rail to the rail stations. Anything I'm missing, Tom or George? I'm sorry? Oh yeah, we want a Costco and a Home Depot over here on the west side. So a little bit specific. We talked a lot about that. A lot of even just Saratoga people are driving through Lehigh to get to the American Fort Costco. And boy, if we had something on the west side, we could alleviate a lot of traffic. Thanks, Zach.
Okay, Ross.
So we had a number of good discussions. One was around open space. We talked a little bit about the master plan mountain biking and hiking trail system, which will be in the hills over Traverse Mountain. The city owns the land. We just need to build out the system and connect it into Corner Canyon. And so that will be a crown jewel that will preserve open space and take advantage of some assets that the city already has. We also talked about leveraging 13 acres that the city already owns inside of Traverse Mountain for essentially a Legacy Center 2.0. We need more junior jazz spaces, and so we need court space. I don't know that we're going to get a new pool up there for the city, but we already have the land. We need to plan on it and put it in play. We need a new intersection here that allows people to get off and alleviate pressure from the SR92 interchange as well. And then we talked a little bit about some, various infrastructure needs. One of the concerns is that when we concentrate high density in certain areas, it's very difficult to build community. These are oftentimes people where there's 60% turnover in any given year in the Seasons apartments, for example. And so as a result, it's fine to have that housing product, but when you put all 3,000 or 5,000 high-density units inside of Traverse Mountain, it makes it very difficult to have a sense of community. And so we need to be able to spread out high density because in addition to the transient population, and again, I want a place for my kids to have apartments and get a starter home and a townhome. I think we all do. But when you have too high a concentration of that in any one area, it leads for high churn and a lack of community, and that makes it very difficult on schools. It makes it very difficult on church-based communities. It makes it very difficult for people to become part of Lehigh. And so we need to kind of spread it out, along transportation corridors, so that people can kind of get in and out, but not have it have an epicenter in one space.
Another concern that was brought up is the fact that there are some key routes east-west through Lehigh, Main Street, Pioneer Crossing specifically, that are pretty crowded as it is. So finding more ways to get from American Fork to Eagle Mountain through Lehigh is going to be key as part of this plan as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So a lot of our discussion based on some of the interconnection between the TODs that are developed and including mixed use. We talked, similar to what's mentioned in the previous one, to not concentrate the high density in one location, but spreading it out throughout, including along the corridors. An important part we talked about as well is within the open space, preserving natural features along the rivers and Dry Creek and in the Traverse Mountain area, as well as adding regional parks, something similar to the sports park that allows the community use at a larger level.